All right, what do conservatives really think about sex as opposed to what they think they should think or what I think they should think? There's an interesting piece in the New York Times, a former newspaper, by Jane Costa. Now, I know Jane a little bit, and she kind of covers conservatives like Jane Goodall covered apes. You know, she kind of moves among us and tries to see our ways without giving up any of her lefty prejudices, which is actually better than the rest of the New York Times, which has no idea what we think at all, but is always condemning us and talking about us. They really, literally do not know what we think, because they can't accept the fact that we have a different base value standard that's better than theirs, and theirs makes no sense. So Jane wrote a piece that said the debate Hugh Hefner won and William Buckley lost. And she talks about a 1966 debate between Buckley and Hugh Hefner, the guy who obviously published Playboy, which was kind of the first acceptable nude female magazine that guys could buy with a straight face, and you could just walk in and buy it because you were getting it for the articles. That's what we used to say. This is what she says. Hefner, in this debate with William Buckley, described his view as anti-Puritanism. It's a response to the Puritan part of our culture. And Buckley argued that Hefner's aim was to shatter the sexual values that Buckley felt were conducive to viable existence. And he said sarcastically, he wondered if Hefner had rewritten the ancient theological tablets, the Ten Commandments, and if he had, oughtn't you claim some sort of moral authority to do so? And if so, what is that moral authority? And Jane goes on to say this. 60 years later, in many ways, now, Hefner's view has won over the conservative view, trying to find a path that includes both defiant hedonism and the moralistic foundations of traditional Buckley-esque conservatism has emerged as a central challenge of the movement. And she talks about conservative support for things like the barstool conservative, Dave Portnoy, which I heard him admired on the Backstage show, and people kind of dithered about it. And he's a guy who believes in promiscuity and abortion and all this stuff. And I think Jane has a point about this. P.J. O'Rourke recently died. He was a very funny writer, very talented. But one of his most famous pieces that conservatives liked, especially in the 80s and 90s, was a piece called How to Drive Fast on Drugs While Getting Your Wing-Wang Squeezed and Not Spill Your Drink. And young conservatives love this. He said, I like to get drunk and drive like a fool. Name me, if you can, a better feeling than the one you get when you're half a bottle of Chivas in the bag with a gram of Coke up your nose and a teenage lovely pulling off her tube top in the next seat over while you're doing 100 miles an hour down a suburban side street. And this was part of O'Rourke's libertarian idea that freedom meant doing whatever you want as long as you took the consequences, which in this case, he said very funnily, would probably be death. So he's joking, but he's not totally joking. And this was something that conservatives loved, and they quoted with a great deal of affection for this. More recently, we had this clown, Andrew Tate. I heard a lot of kind words about him, even here at the DailyWire. I heard some before he was arrested for human trafficking. But let's lay that aside. I'm just talking about the stuff he said. Here's just a little clip of him as cut 4.
In their house, sitting there, bored, completely in love with me. And of course, they don't go out. They're not allowed out. Like, oh, Tate's away, so they go out with their friends. No. You don't go to the club with your friends. I don't know what kind of bitch-ass dude is letting his chicks go to the club with her friends without him. No. You stay in the house. You don't go nowhere. You're not, no restaurants, no clubs, nothing.
All right. So obviously, there's a bit of satire to Tate's routine, because guys don't want their girlfriends to go to clubs because it's not like a guy going to the club. Girls are continually being hit on. And if you ask a girl, would you want your guy to go to a club where he's being continually hit on? Most guys are not. I mean, I am, obviously, but most guys are not continually hit on. The girls don't want guys doing that either. But the way he does it, always very aggressive, very much he's in control. A woman belongs to me. If you're married to her, you own her, and all this stuff. And, this was incredibly popular with right-wing kids especially, but right-wing males, right? In New York Magazine, a piece by Lisa Miller, she says, Tate appealed to the rural American pro-gun constituencies and to the anti-vax, anti-mask communities. He appealed to schoolboys in Sydney and working-class immigrants in the UK, to young rideshare drivers and to jet-setting tech bros. Tate's saturation was so complete that he reached into the blue villages of New York City, where many boys in their bedrooms found his rude and ruthless evisceration of every sacred liberal value hilarious. Feminism, environmentalism, gluten intolerance, literature, Harry Styles, Lil Nas X. Tate assaulted all of these with pejoratives the boys themselves knew not to use. Now, she's right about this, and I don't think conservatives can deny it. I think that we can't deny that there is an attraction to this genuinely offensive and insulting, swaggering attitude toward women. This guy who called me a misogynist, he's a kid, he's a student at the University of Chicago, but he brought out this thing that they're always bringing up about the fact that I say that women could not have fought in sword fights in medieval battles, right? They'd have been vaporized, right? And he said, no, that's not true, because he's been taught that this is, but the thing is, people think that when I'm saying that I'm being like Andrew Tate, I'm saying you couldn't win a sword fight. No, because first of all, if I lived in the Middle Ages, I'd have been a monk, right? I'd have been a scribe who would have spent most of my time being me. I would have spent most of my time burying nuns so that no one would find out that I had gotten them pregnant. I'd have to kill them. It would be like, Brother Andrew, it's time for compliance. Just a minute, I have to finish digging this hole for Sister Angelica. That would have been my life in the Middle Ages. So this is not a brag or anything. I just think it's very important to tell the truth, especially in stories. So anyway, why are conservatives attracted to this genuinely mean and denigrating tone toward women, right? And I said this very, very early on when I started the show. And I first started working a lot around people who were much, much younger than me, who were like a generation younger than me. And I started to notice that the way they talked about women was very different than the way that men of my generation talked about women. Now, men and women roll their eyes at one another's picadillos, right? We all do this. Oh, women, oh, men, that's natural. But in my generation, we always did this with a great deal of affection. So we said all these things, oh, women are irrational, women are emotional, women do this, that. But we always said them with a great deal of affection. And I assume that our wives were saying the same thing about us. They're gruff and they scream at the TV and they do, whatever. But we basically liked each other. And the reason we liked each other is we were doing things for one another in our roles as men and women, right? So we knew that what we were depended on the other. If my wife wanted to raise children, she needed me to support her, and she respected me for that. If I wanted, to have a home and to not be a wild guy and live the kind of life that I knew I would live without her, she had to make that home, and I was grateful for that. I've told this story before, but I remember a feminist coming to my house to dinner and literally at the dinner table turning to my wife and saying, you cook his meals, you take care of his children, you keep his house. What does he do for you? And my wife just looked at her and silently lifted her two hands to indicate the fact that I had built the world in which that was possible for her to do. It was possible for her to have her life. So we laughed at each other, we rolled our eyes at one another, but we had a great deal of affection. Now, what I noticed about young men almost instantly when I came to the Daily Wire and a lot of, just was even at PJTV before that, when I was suddenly talking to a lot of people who were younger than I was, they would say the exact same things that we said. Oh, women are irrational, women are emotional, but they would say it with genuine anger, with real anger. And obviously, this had to do with feminism. That was the difference. They were raised in a feminist world. I was not raised in a feminist world. When feminism came sweeping in, I completely ignored it. I didn't ignore the fact that some women wanted to work. I was fine. What do I care? I only care about what one woman does because I only have to live and deal with one woman. But I didn't care about women making different choices. What I did start to see was this animosity, that it was all men's fault, that women had been oppressed, which is a lie. Black people had been oppressed. They had a grudge. I thought that they were saying some rational stuff. Not women. Women were not oppressed. They had a different magisterium. People say, well, women couldn't even vote. Voting was not part of their magisterium. The home was part of their magisterium. There was lots of work for them to do. This idea that women didn't work because they took care of the home. As I always say, go read Proverbs, 31, 32, Proverbs, the one that says a woman, who can find a virtuous woman, her price is far above rubies, because she was running a business. She wasn't just feeding her kids. She was also planting vineyards and selling land and making clothes. And all those things were taken away from her by the Industrial Revolution. And that's when feminism really got its start. But obviously, these younger men had been lied to. They'd been told that women could win sword fights, that they don't need your protection. Keep your damn money. I don't have to have any respect for you. Why do you're toxic? You're toxic masculinity. Why would I respect that? We're just you couldn't even make a movie in which a man rescues a woman, which is one of the things that makes men strong. I mean, yes, it is true that men are proud of the fact that they will defend women, but why should they? If women say, no, I could beat you in any fight, it's a lie. And so these kids had been lied to, and at the same time, they were still expected to treat women like gentlemen. Why should they? When women were saying, we don't want to be ladies, why should men still be gentlemen? Why? Because men are more powerful than women. And being a gentleman is something ladies need, but they don't want to admit it under feminism. So it was all this lie. And so I get it. I get why Andrew Tate feels like the truth. It's the difference between responding and reacting, okay? When you respond to feminists, I respond to feminists largely by ignoring them and not taking them seriously. I never have. I've never believed it. I don't seriously think I've ever heard a word of truth come out of a feminist's mouth. They come out with these things. In my lifetime, I've seen them say, oh, men and women are exact. It's un-American, Gloria Steinem said, to think that men and women are different. Now they say, oh, men can get pregnant. Please, if I lay awake worrying about that, but I respond to it, I will call out a falsehood. I will say that Dylan Mulvaney is offensive because he's doing blackface for women. I will say those things, but I'm not going to build my philosophy. Reactionary is when you build your philosophy around the anger you feel at being lied to, all right? Being grateful and respectful of the things women do, and instead of swaggering around, is a way to build things. It's fear. It's fear. If you're afraid to speak the truth, if you're afraid YouTube is going to cut you off because you say things that are true, and YouTube says, well, our scientists feel that that's not nice. We've studied this, and it's not nice. We're cutting that off. If you're afraid, and you can't say that, hey, you shouldn't really kill your children in the womb because I can't say that because I'm a man. And I can't have an opinion about that. No. Human beings are that's an anomaly. It's anomalous that human fathers take care of their children. In nature, in the rest of the animal kingdom, most fathers do not take care of their children. Evolution can't explain this. Evolution can't explain why when your father is being unjust because you expect him to be just. Evolution can't explain why you tell yourself that your father is being just even when he's not, right? They can't explain that. It is something we have learned to do spiritually through living in Christendom. It is really the Christian church and the Catholic church, to be specific, that has taught us to do this, okay? Now, that is what we're looking for. Again, we are looking to live with respect for our cohort or companions who are women, and for women to respect us and what we do. We're looking for that again. And I personally would like to see women en masse return to the home, but I'd also like to see businesses, the computer, bring back what the Industrial Revolution took away, so women can also, because taking care of a home and raising children can also be brain deadening if you don't have other things to do. But let me leave you with this, all right? Here's the thing. There are two kinds of people in the world, men and women. Only two kinds of people there are. It's the only two kinds of people there are. There are men, there are women. But there are a million kinds of individuals, right? Women are not just women. They're also individuals. Men are not just men. They're also individuals. And we have different kinds of strengths and weaknesses, each and every one of us, and different kinds of desires. But society needs norms. Society lives off its norms. If drag queens vanish, if women doctors vanish, if women soldiers vanish, society will get along just fine. If mothers vanish, we are doomed. We are no longer going to be human beings. If fathers vanish, we are no longer going to be human beings. So all I would say is, yeah, a free society can afford some eccentrics, can afford some individuality, but respect the people who built the house. Respect the people who keep the ceiling on. All of it, If men don't have the courage to live by their lights, if they don't have the courage to treat women with the respect for women being women, if they're going to swagger around like Andrew Tate because they're really afraid to speak the truth, then you're just going to end up in Andrew Tate's place. You're just going to end up basically on the left, accepting what the left is telling you, that there's something wrong with the relationship, the normal relationship between men and women. I think we have to have a lived conservative of love. This is what I think it is. I think laws should protect and encourage the female magisterium of the home without forcing anyone into it. Those are not hard laws to make. It is not hard laws to make that elevate homemaking and respect homemaking and basically put it forward as a goal and a beautiful thing that keeps society human and alive without forcing people to do it if that's not what they want to do. It's also not wrong to not marry a woman if she's not going to give you the home that you desperately need and want. You don't have to just marry a woman because she's the woman who'll talk to you, right? You want to marry a woman who's going to give you the life you want as you expect to give her the life that she wants. I mean, this is not a revolution that's going to take place in DC. This is a revolution that takes place when you live it, when you have the courage to speak it, and when you believe what you believe and vote the way you live. And I think that is the problem that conservatives have that has led them down this stupid Andrew Tate path where we just look ridiculous and eventually will lose to a feminist vision that will cost us our humanity. For more great content, like and subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to The Andrew Klavan Show wherever you get your podcasts.